Okay, Sharon,
Very good.
you can introduce yourself.
Me? Sharon.
Whoever. I said Sharon, but I could have met Ed or
I'm Sharon Fuchs, Land Use Committee member.
I'm Terry Parker, board member and Land Use Committee member.
Ed Gorman, guest to this committee and board vice chair.
Thank you, everyone.
And I didn't hear anything from Michelle as to whether if she was going to join us or not.
Okay. We do have Barb Hamilton will join us at 7:30. So it's on our agenda as ambassadors at lounge noise issue at 7:15. So if we bump that to 7:30 and maybe get some of the updates before she shows up. Would that work for everyone?
Yep.
So amending the agenda so the ambassador lounge goes to at 7:30. All say aye.
Aye.
All those
I can't
opposed, same
vote.
sign. Okay. So we've got the minutes to look through. And the one thing that I did notice is I like the idea that having some of the information of what happened after the committee met in here, but it should be in parentheses, so it doesn't look like that's part of the minutes,
Okay.
or taken out, or maybe added at the very end, saying subsequent to these minutes, this happened. I don't know.
Post-meeting follow-up, something like that.
Yeah, because it gets really confusing if I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Has everyone had a chance to read through the minutes?
Yep.
Not
That was
really.
June. That was June.
Well, given that this today feels like just one long day in March.
Exactly. I know. Yes, I read them and I'm fine with them. With that change, if you want to put post-meeting follow-up or put it in parentheses to indicate that it was something that happened after the meeting, with those changes, I'm good.
Okay. Terry?
Me?
Yeah?
I apologize. I didn't get through them.
Okay. Ed?
Wasn't at the meeting, so I can't, I just accept them on faith.
Okay, so there's a majority of us that were at the meeting, so if we can get a motion in a second, I will move. We adopt the minutes.
I second.
As spoken by Sharon, and you second it based on that, right?
Right.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, passes. Thank you. Okay. Do we have any new business?
Did
Cameron, I'd
you?
like to, you sent that email about the community park path grant or whatever it's called.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to add that at the end for just a short discussion.
You don't want that under new business?
Well, you want to, okay, is that now?
Yeah, we can talk about it now.
Okay, real quickly, I got many things on my screen here. Kelly, you don't have that up, do you?
I don't. Do you want me to get it up?
Close my Outlook. Yeah, I mean, basically, there's a grant available to build some pathways, community paths. And Tamara sent out an email with a map suggesting applying for a grant to put a path at the north end of Rose City Park from the north end of 62nd Drive over to the staircase up to Sacramento, which would mirror the concept I was pushing for the 60th bike path. And, I think.
So the path would just go from the street to the stairs.
Yeah, and maybe we should include, the city seems to think the stairs are not safe. So I'll work on the grant, but I think I'd like to include an option, if necessary, to what's the word? Remodel, refabricate, reinforce the stairway up to Sacramento.
Are you able to do that? My question would be, could you do that without getting into ADA?
Yeah, that came up during our meetings. It had to be ADA. Any new thing of that would have to be ADA compliant. So then
Yeah.
what do you do when you get to the stairs?
I don't mean necessarily the path, but I
Well,
meant
the path
if you
has
did
to be
something to the
ADA
stairs
compliant.
itself, you would probably have to do something for ADA.
Well,
They
I
said that-
think this goes around ADA because they call it a path. And so they talk about bike and pedestrian path. And I think there's nomenclature there, and I might be totally wrong, but which allows places like in Southwest Portland to have a path that goes between a subdivision and another subdivision without it having to be ADA. And so this is the concept I think that Metro is pushing forward.
Well, I think the thing that I was thinking is if you did something to the staircase itself versus just a path between the street and the stairs, would you have to have that? Would you have to consider something ADA compliant to get up the hill?
Once you get to the stairs, you mean?
Yes. I mean, no, I'm saying let's just say that the path, it's okay for the path. But then if you did something to the stairs too, such as strengthening them or something like that, would that then kick in the ADA?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Maybe we should just focus on getting it to the stairs. If you recall, Kristen had the idea to build what's the
Switchback,
pardon?
the switchback.
Switchback, yeah, which would be prohibitively expensive. But I think if you get it to the stairs, and then put a one of those bike rails in, I think it's worth pursuing. I don't know that we need to spend a whole lot of time on it right now.
Well, they do expect us to have a letter out by the 30th of the month if we have an intent to proceed, which is going to be before our next board meeting.
Yeah,
I would move that we go for the path.
So you're saying let's proceed with the letter of intent?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
the path. Yeah.
Okay, and then we can bring it up at the board meeting next month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's my motion is let's do a letter of intent for the path.
Okay, is there a second for that motion?
I second the motion.
Okay, it's a motion seconded. All those in favor of letter of intent for this path on 62nd?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign? No one's opposed? It's unanimous. Let's go for it. All right.
Tamara, under new business, I sent you a thing about Sandy, the Rose Lane project. I talked to April today. Do you want me to just roughly jump over that, or?
Well, since we're, unless there's more new business, we can go through that until it's time for.
It's not really going to take very long.
Oh, sure, we got plenty of time.
Okay, I sent you just before I signed on. I sent you the email she sent me back. I have not had a chance to read it, and I have not had a chance to look at. I think she gave a link, but what she told me on the phone is that 57th and Sandy, they're going to put a lane on 57th. We're not talking about Sandy,
right?
Which kind of eases my feelings a little bit. And then apparently the 72nd and Sandy should have been 92nd and Sandy where Prescott crosses there. And they did have put a bus lane in there. I noticed that, I think this past week or so. So, because she didn't say anything about 72nd and Sandy, and yet that's what I remember the thing from Peabot saying. So really, that's all I have to say about it. But I wanted you to be aware, and you can check out what I sent you just before I signed on to Zoom here.
Okay, great.
I haven't had a chance myself to look at it. So
Harry, what is the lane for on 57th? A bus lane?
this is probably a right turn lane and a bus lane that will also duplicate as a right turn lane. And I don't know which side of, whether it's the north side or the south side or both sides, that they're going to do it. I didn't get into that with her. She had a meeting she had to go to when I talked to her this afternoon, so it was a fairly short conversation. But she did apologize for not getting back to me.
And for clarification's sake, you're talking about 57th. So that would be an east side or a west side, not a north or south.
Well, on 57th.
Right.
So there's a north side of Sandy and there's an east or a south side of Sandy.
Yes.
So it's going to be one or the other or both. And I am going to guess and say it's going to be, if I were to guess, I would say it would be on the north side, because that's where one place where it really backs up at rush hour from people coming off of Columbia Boulevard.
As I recall, it the description was near Prescott.
That's the other one. Okay. 72nd, but it was, I thought it said 72nd and Sandy. And she said, no, it's near 92nd at Prescott. So that one's in, it's not taking a lane away. It's not doing anything. So as far as I'm concerned, that one's, if you know where the shoe store is, it's right in front of the shoe store.
Hanks, that closed.
Is it closed?
Yep.
Okay. Well, but anyway, there has been a lane painted there. She didn't think it was complete, but I was more concerned about thinking it was 72nd and Sandy, because that's a tight intersection and it's got a lot of problems.
Right. True.
I just threw up, this is the link that she had in her email. And this is the Rose Lane project she referred to in the email.
Can you enlarge
Terry.
that?
What's that?
Can you enlarge it? Oh, I can do it. Never mind. I enlarged it. Sorry.
So she said projects 5, which is 57th and Sandy.
Yeah.
And northbound, southbound.
5 would be around Fremont then.
What's that?
It looks like 5 is around Fremont.
No, you're talking about 6.
No, 6 is Prescott.
Prescott.
That's 82nd and Prescott.
Yeah. So this is it just that bubble just happens to be in this.
Yeah, but we're looking at 5 at 57th there. You can see Cully up at the top.
So here's the proposed solution for this. Extend left turn pockets north and south by removing some parking near the intersection. So
Okay.
remove parking going southbound on the north side of Sandy and remove parking going northbound on the south side of Sandy. So that,
Like no parking on Sandy on the south side there.
Well, we're not
Anyway.
talking about Sandy. We're talking about on 57th.
I know on south of Sandy, there's no parking there on 57th, right near the intersection.
That's true. But she's talking about extending the left turn lane, which would mean that the parking would probably be taken off on the other side of the street, on the bank side.
well, I think there's a bottleneck here with the left turn lane to go onto Sandy, and it blocks the through lane and the right turn lane. And what they want to do is lengthen the left turn lane to get those cars that want to turn left over there and free up traffic going this way, and then do the same thing the other way.
And I have no problem with that. I don't know about anybody else, but if they can get traffic to move through there a lot better, because that's actually what they're going to be doing, is getting all of traffic to move through there a lot better. That's going to be great.
Yeah, but those businesses, the doctor's clinic, the dentist clinic,
Well,
Dr.
the
Over's
doctor's clinic is for lease.
and, pardon me,
The
He
doctor's clinic is
retired.
for
It's
lease.
empty. He retired.
Yeah, the,
Dr. Mullen there at Rose City.
yes,
Oh.
there's a for lease sign on it.
Oh, that's a
Wow.
beautiful building. Anyway, oh, they do have some parking near the back, but some of the,
He was a fixture.
I think Dr. Over had some parking in the back, but there's some houses to the north of Jack in the Box on the east side of the street that might be affected there.
Well, I'm thinking on the south side, the houses that are on the west side of the street, they may take a little bit of that.
Mm,
You know,
Well-
after the bank's south of the bank's driveway.
mm.
But the whole thing it'll actually make traffic move through that move across that intersection a lot better, including
that's
on
a-
Sunday morning when the
Church.
late rain gets out.
Yeah, well, they're moving, remember?
Yeah, I know.
I don't know
Okay, has-
how many construction projects are on hold because
Yeah.
of COVID. Because financing for churches, for all sorts of group meeting spaces.
Mm.
Well, apparently this 57th is going to be restriped now that it's repaved. It's actually going to be done, right away now. They were waiting for the repaving. I kind of got that half and half from our conversation.
Okay.
It's already being repaved. It's in the midst of the process.
Well, yeah, it's south of Sandy. It's already done, but it's not striped yet.
Thank you so
Well,
much.
They've done
for
some,
following
they've
up
done
on
some
that.
today. So,
Thank you for following up on that, Terry.
You bet.
Good. Does anyone have any new construction projects that we haven't heard about?
They're
Nope.
still building, apparently, not necessarily in our neighborhood. They said that there were 27, what are those things called? Cranes around the city. So that in Portland Tribune was saying there's 27 up, so they're still building.
Okay. That's happening.
People still moving here.
One thing I can say about new business, just for the record, is that it seems like Providence Home Services might be gearing up because I'm seeing more cars parked on the street and on Halsey now. I mean, since the pandemic, it's been pretty void of cars, but seems like there's a few more during the day now. Not the way it was pre-pandemic, but there's a few more than have seem to be coming back.
Has anyone seen anything new from RIP, the residential infill project? I haven't seen anything come around.
I didn't quite understand. You sent something that the shelter project put together, and it was what, trying to look at RIP and try to figure out how to have more houseless camps, tiny villages or something, utilizing RIP somehow. Was that what that was that you sent the other? Yeah, you forwarded it. Did you join that PDX shelter forum group?
I did not.
You did not. Okay.
I thought it was more about vacant land or vacant buildings.
Yeah, well, whatever avenue they can find to find any land or any space. I did attend a forum yesterday, which would be our next thing, the PDX Shelter Forum. They hosted 2 fellows from Seattle. You want me to just talk briefly about that
Oh,
before
sure. Go
Barbara
ahead.
comes?
Yeah.
And they were 2 interesting fellows. And they talked about how you get into a community to build a village. What I had mentioned before when I attended the forum in June was that we have to disperse tiny houses or clusters throughout the city, and maybe having groups of 4 tiny houses or tents or whatever, so that it wasn't a big thing for an area to handle, might be the way to go. But these 2 fellows from Seattle, they were definitely advocating larger villages up to 70 people. And some had 2 in them, some had 2 and children in them, but they definitely advocated for larger groups to be together. They would have staff. I don't know who funds the staff, if it comes from the city or not, because they have to be managed. You just don't set up a cluster of people living somewhere and leave them to their own devices, because there's a whole lot to look at and manage, and fights happen. People who are coupled in one tiny house that is built for 2 can't stand to live together anymore. So lots of things happen. People have different needs. And they run 10 of these tiny villages in the Seattle area. So they were providing real boots on the ground insight about needs. But I just thought, man, if we were going to look at our neighborhood, again, everybody taking on some of the project, if we're going to be able to have some here in our neighborhood. And we talked about this last time, but I thought, if you were going to be advocating for 50 to 70 people to be living, where in our neighborhood could such happen?
Yeah. Are they talking about these folks living in tents or small physical units?
They were tiny houses.
Tiny houses.
I think they did talk about some tent areas, but these were tiny houses. They had common areas. One even had a music dome where people could get together. They said the dome didn't work, it leaked, but they were trying to provide transitional, not permanent housing, but it was just a transition from street to a tiny house to then hopefully for long-term, if that met their needs. Everybody has different needs. Some people don't want long-term housing. Some people may only want to be in a tiny house for a period of time, then maybe go back on the street. They had $60,000 for a laundry facility. It's laundry, shower, and toilets. That's a lot of money. I don't know where this money all came from. And the tiny houses were, depending upon the higher cost to build them, or you had a lot of volunteer labor. They went anywhere from $2,500 to like $15,000 or more to build these things. Anyway, it was a very enlightening, as I said, boots on the ground experience of these people. But I just didn't see where in our neighborhood, at least in my limited scan of the land that we have, where even if it was on church property and you didn't have to have any zoning issues, because church property can be wherever. I don't know where something like that could be housed, could be held.
Well, we don't have a lot of open space, except in our parks. And I would not want to have Normandale overwhelmed with housing.
No.
And so that would be one concern, is if we had, like I had mentioned before, the southern parking lot area that's at Normandale facing the Catholic Church. Catholic ministries. That area. So we have pods and pockets. I also wonder about whether or not the Methodist Church is going to survive as a church. The building itself, the organization. So that's a huge structure that could be reused, and it is for public use.
Question.
Level A occupancy.
Question: Is there over there where the Catholic press is and whatnot, within those buildings, is there an empty warehouse building of some sort in there? Are they all occupied? I don't know.
I don't know.
I mean, that's a possibility where you could do something. I got the impression too from one of the debates, and I don't remember which one, at least one of the candidates was talking about, having these tent cities like they've got down on the east side under the freeway there, next to the waterfront practically. Well, actually it's the freeway's between it. You can see it from the freeway if you come over the Markham Bridge.
It's the sanctioned camping on platforms.
Right,
Better.
right, right. And
Right.
it's a big piece of property. We don't have anything that big here, but
The parking lot.
well, this was
Isn't
more
it?
than this was
Paved.
more than a parking lot. I think there was a
It's
building there at
paved.
one time. But this is, I mean, we've got just small parking lots that with social distancing, you might be able to get a dozen or 15 people on.
And that might be all we have. And unless you, I mean, I know that one of the issues with having an industrial building, you are limited to the level of occupancy. And Kelly can wax eloquent about that as an architect, because if you get so many people, then you have to have fire code provisions. And
You're going to have that social distancing. You're still going to have to have that social distancing inside the building, even if you just had a big, huge area. A big, huge floor like the convention center or something like that. You still got to have that social distancing. So you're not going to pack people in. But
What, are you going to put tiny houses in a warehouse?
no. But you could put some sort of dividers or something like that.
So you're just
a
talking
cube,
about an
office
emergency
cubes,
shelter.
Office cubes or something like that. You wouldn't have to.
Yes.
Well,
That
this-
might even be extreme.
As Tamara mentioned,
This is a
the
little-
problem is that, if you adapt a building like that, you'd have to add fire sprinklers and additional exits and other things to make it code compliant. You couldn't just,
And somebody to run it. You'd have to have a nonprofit or, Union Gospel Mission or somebody run something like that. Again, you can't just set up an area and then leave it to itself. It has to be staffed and managed and overseen, and all the things that have to be done.
Right.
Run interference with the neighborhood. First, they said the first thing that's going to happen is, a neighbor's going to file a lawsuit, and then you're going to have an environmental study and all these things. So, they talked about trying to ease it into an area and just set up maybe a temporary thing for 3 months. And then it has to be run really well and have no problems. Then you go back to the neighbors and say, well, what'd you think? Well, gee, that really wasn't that bad. And then they go, well, how about let's extend it for another 3 months, or, try to ease your way in the door. But these are not free-for-alls. These are managed. They're managed. They're whether they set up self-government, kind of like some of the other areas. I forget the one that's overlooked neighborhood. What's Ove? Is that what it's called? That particular one. I was down at City Hall, and there's one fellow there who kind of runs that place, and Amanda Fritz knew him on a first name basis. What do you need, Terry? What do you need here? Do you need us to bring in water? I mean, they were well organized and self-governed and managed, but they were also watched very carefully. Any problems, they're gone. So you can't just set it up and just let people be, because you've got, a lot of people who have a lot of needs that are out on the street. I mentioned the other day that someone rang our doorbell at 7 a.m. in the morning. I don't usually open the front door at 7 a.m. in the morning. It was still dark out. Thought it was a delivery person. Opened the door, and there was a homeless fellow standing on I feel terrible. Anyway, standing on our doorway. He was soaking wet, and he asked for a cup of coffee and a lighter. And I didn't have any coffee made. I told him I'd give him some ground coffee. And so I poured some in a bag and gave him some ground coffee, and I had a book of matches. He was very polite. I asked him what size of pants he wore, because I had an extra pair of jeans, but he didn't feel like he could take him with him then. And off he went, polite as anything, but it was, probably slept in the park that night.
Wow.
A lot of people have a lot of needs. Yeah, a lot of people
Yes.
have a lot of needs.
We've got Barb with us tonight. Barb, are you there? Can you unmute yourself? Barb. I see a widget.
As she
I'm
signed
coming. I'm coming. Hold on one
She's there.
sec.
There she is.
I was doing other work, so the Zoom window disappeared on me.
Uh-oh,
How are you tonight?
There you go.
there you are. Hi.
Hi. Sorry, I'm working on my couch, not my desk.
Doing great. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
I participated in the meeting that Barb set up with Paul Van Orden, and we found out that we were incredibly lucky to have him come out and investigate the ambassador site because he is serving as the only investigator for the entire city right
Oh,
now.
boy.
And that takes up about only a third of his time. So he's 6 months behind on doing these investigations, and they have one position that still has not been filled. And, you know, so at the end of this, what I would like to do is recommend to the board that we do a letter to the city council and CC the noise commission and say, fill this position, get things running, and get some help, because, you know, one person for 640,000 people, yeah, not good. So you want to catch us up on that meeting and where we are now, Barb?
Well, I haven't heard from Paul since,
Okay.
but the way we left it was that the group of us that were on the call were to reach out to different entities. And thus far, the success we've had, if I can find my phone, we reached out to, I think it was to the fire marshal, and Kathleen was then transferred to somebody else. Long story short, she got a hold of someone who made a site visit over there and who reported back to her day before yesterday. Scott Holland was his name. Who she said who really is with fire and rescue, but the building division. Now, I don't know what that means. Like, what does that mean? But he went to the ambassador, took pictures plus research. It turns out that the owner did not pull a permit for the stage and never would have received one had he applied. That it has to come down immediately. He will be going out tomorrow, which would have been yesterday, to tell him. And she says, he was just aghast. So there you go. Said all the buildings around would go up in flames in a minute if someone lit a match. So at least the wall that they had built around their perimeter, the back perimeter of their site.
On the south side there, on the south side of the lot.
There's on the east edge and south edge.
Okay.
From the building back, there's a wall which included a 3 or 4 step up stage. So it sounds like that will come down. I did.
That was all plywood, right? That was all plywood.
Yes.
Yeah.
And although it was somebody else had gone over there, one of our neighbors had gone over there and thought it was very well built, that because the comment was, you know, he was serious. This was not a short-term investment. But I did go by there today, and the short wall that's on the east side of the property is already down.
Okay.
I don't know about I don't know whether Scott Holland has been there. I assume he has. He did follow up yesterday, and that will be coming down. The best news that we got from the meeting with Paul was that I had contacted the developer and owner of the building that's going up on the corner, the multi-use 5 or 6 story building that's going up on the corner of 47th and Sandy, which shares a property line with the ambassador. And she did make it to the call with Paul and was told that even if I don't really understand all this, why the gyrations, but in the moment he was given direction by Paul to meet certain criteria. Even though, pardon?
Who was the owner of the Umpqua building or?
The owner of the Ambassador.
Okay,
Yet he told us on the call with the owner of the building, that the new construction building, and maybe it's because it's not occupied yet, that once it's occupied, he could never meet that criteria, because once it's occupied, a shared property line, that the decibel levels will never be low enough, assuming that anyone complains. That was his other point. So Kathy, I can't remember her last name at the moment, who is the president of Co's Development.
Kathy Rains.
Thank you. She made note of that basically once she gets people in there, if it's ever to happen again, that complaints must be made in order to squelch it. So I think we've dodged a bullet in the sense that, I mean, we put up with it. We put up with it for months. It was terrible. It was not a fun summer. It was just another stressor for this
sorry.
neighborhood,
So
on
sorry.
top of all the others. But I think based on Kathy's building taking, I don't know when it's supposed to be completed and when occupancy is supposed to take place, but it sounds like that
And
will
we've
be
already
the
got
saving
one
grace.
violation. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, that too.
And that was issued to them.
was it noise or fire?
It was noise, and that was October 4th by Paul. And so, I mean, that's when he registered 2 to 3 times the decibel amount. And this was across the street in the Rose Mortuary parking lot.
Right.
So it was loud. But his protocol is you have to, let them know that this is happening. And if you do it again, the price keeps on going up. And first time I think is $300. The second time is $1,000.
He said, yeah.
And it then goes up to 5,000. And it doesn't go away. So
does he have to physically go out and measure the decibels in order to issue another citation, or are there now monitors set up somewhere that will automatically register these things, decibel level?
no monitors. He would have to measure it again.
He has to physically go out and do it. Oh, the one person per 650,000 people.
Right.
This
And
is the guy that dealt with Our Lady of Lavang noise issues. Same guy, nice kid.
Yeah. Nice guy.
We were very grateful that he prioritized us. I mean, I don't know, maybe because we're the squeaky wheel thing.
A
You get
nice
enough
guy.
people. I mean, I'm so glad that you got as many people at this meeting as you did. So that was in the middle of the day. That was good.
Yes, luckily the other 2 people are retired. Lucky them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, lucky for
Yeah,
us.
thank you for coming.
You bet. And so I'm really glad you pulled in Kathy, because that's an ace in the hole there to get her on board with this.
Yes. I mean, I had actually I had seen other people in the neighborhood that lived in other apartment houses, and people are very understanding and, didn't want to rock the boat, and, it's a pandemic. And I said, I'm okay with that too. I just don't want this to go on forever, because if nobody says anything, then there's absolutely nothing holding him from, doing it any weekend he wants. If we have a nice weekend in December, a nice weekend in February, it'll be happening. So I just needed some parameters around it. And in so doing, we've gotten to this point. So.
Okay. So at this point, I'd like to go ahead and make sure that we support you as a land use committee, and then have the board send a letter of support for the neighborhood, neighbors and cause development and everybody in there to get this under control.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And that would be to the city, to the building, to the.
I would think, there's a couple letters. One is probably to Paul himself, saying, please, go ahead. You've got our full backing as a neighborhood association to help these folks, and anything we can do to help support you in this endeavor, let us know. That kind of thing.
Okay. I do know you did say that you wanted to send a request to fill the needs.
And
of
that
his
would be the
department.
second letter. But we have to do a motion for each one of these. So is as far as the first letter to Paul and his, I don't know, those higher up, I don't know if we need to do that, but just to let him and the Noise Commission know that we are backing him in doing this. Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay. Motion seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ed, are you here?
I'm here, but I am not a member of the committee, so I can't vote.
Oh, you're not a member of the committee anymore.
I'm a guest. Remember, I stepped out in early summer.
That's
You could
right.
appoint him for tonight. You could
I'm
appoint him
just
for
guessing.
tonight only.
All good. Okay. So I think it passed.
Yes.
Unanimously.
Oh, great. And second, I'd like to do a letter to the city council identifying this as a horrible problem, that they have a vacancy, they haven't filled it in, who knows, 6 months. And it's horrible. They've got, what is it?
They're in the Office of Civic Life, right?
Yep.
So it would go to who? Suk Ree?
Yep.
It's likely we'll have a new overseer of that
Perhaps.
after the first of the year.
I
Perhaps.
have my yard sign. We better.
Yeah,
Well,
my
they're
yard sign too. It's been up since November.
You can ask them the question at the general meeting, right?
That's
I don't
right.
even-
Yeah.
When is it?
Tuesday?
Next Wednesday.
Next
Wednesday.
Yep. And we got one person for intake of complaints, and they're 2 to 3 weeks behind on getting the letters out to those people saying, we heard you, and the owner now has a letter. So that's late. And then 6 months behind on investigations.
Can you imagine?
It's just crazy. And part of
And
that
we don't know the numbers, but I mean, it doesn't really matter whether it's 200 or 2,000. It's a ridiculous amount of work for a single person.
yes. And it's also because everything was shut down to begin with COVID. And then they came back to this whole pile of stuff. And then on top of that, people are doing everything outside to keep the distance. So I recommend a letter to the city council and attention Chloe Udaly, that this position needs to be filled yesterday, basically.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, it passes. Yay. Okay.
Wonderful.
One thing that I noticed in the pictures that you had, or actually he showed me that were online, they had a fire pit under an awning, a tent awning.
Right.
And that again is against the fire code.
Well, and that's why we call that is why the fire, the whatever the department name was. I'm sorry, I'm not that familiar.
Probably
That's
building
why they were.
inspection.
That's why they were on our list to call.
Right.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
So it's coming down because it's a wood structure that's a fire hazard in and of itself. And in addition, they were building fires on top of it.
No, they were building fires in the, on the concrete, little patio next to their building. They put up
see.
little, fabric tent structures, and
I see.
I'm looking now to see if they're still up there, if there's
Yeah, 'cause
anything.
they had these tent awnings with picnic tables and like a fire pit underneath it.
A wood burning fire pit
Yes.
here.
Yeah. So it's a gas fire pit. So you've got the fumes from a gas fire pit underneath this with two picnic tables on either side under a big awning. And it's like,
Boy,
no.
how did you get this meeting with him? This was separate than the meeting that came up that Ed had mentioned, where they were going to be having their regular meeting, and I'd sent it to Barbara, seeing if maybe she could get on their agenda and attend their regular meeting. This was something completely separate that you set up, and he agreed to. Oh, very good.
Yeah.
All right.
She got it
Good job.
during the day at 2:00, and we
Good.
had almost an
I think
hour
I
of
just
time.
harassed him so much that actually,
That's what you need to do.
I invited him to talk to just a couple of us,
Uh-huh.
because we had written so much to he and his assistant there, and he was the one that wrote back at that point and said, I'm going to try and get a group, a bunch of people who have complained on the same call, and not a lot of them showed up, but it worked out.
Okay. All right. We got it.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time and efforts on our behalf.
You bet. Thank you for just doing it and getting out there and harassing, because that's exactly what we would be doing.
And I bet your
Yes.
neighbors thank you too.
I'm just grateful that summer is over, and I'm sorry to have to say that, but just to have your weekends back, it's just
Well,
nice.
isn't that what the tent was for? It was to keep it going through colder weather.
Or at least he had this misguided impression that having a tent would help keep the sound from traveling. That's what Paul said, although I'm sure that part of it was to be able to have it, he would
Outside.
probably have put heaters under that tent,
Yeah.
and then he would have continued on and on and on. So
Mhm.
thank God there's some sanity, and that Paul prioritized us. I do appreciate it. So thank you both. Thank you all.
Thank you
Thanks
very
for
much.
voting yes.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night now.
One follow-up, not to this, but to what we were talking about before. Sharon said she had somebody at her door, and there is a guy that's living in his van on 62nd at Rose City Park, and there's also somebody that's living in their van on 72nd that's there most of the time.
I've seen that van. I didn't know there was someone on 62nd.
Yeah, it's somebody sprayed paint some graffiti for some graffiti on the side of it that's not very nice. Let's put it that way. And then also when you were talking about the numbers of people, Lorhurst Park, the playground area, the sidewalks, there's over 50 tents there now. The city has brought in a wash basin or something, but I mean, it can pile up really fast.
And that's just a free-for-all.
That's a free for all on the sidewalk in front of the playground.
It's not a managed
and
area.
on 39th.
Yeah.
So,
Well, one thing I forgot is they really emphasized that having a larger group was better than having a smaller group, because you tend to have people working more as a community in the larger group, whereas you can get into it with smaller groups. It's almost more squabbles, but also having the staff and to run it. And
well, if you're going to bring out wash facilities and sinks and toilets and stuff like that, you
very
want
expensive.
People, because it's
Very
not cheap to
expensive.
do it. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. We can move on,
Okay.
but I just wanted to
All
throw that.
right.
Hey, Thank you for following up on that, Sharon.
You're welcome. It's my newest little interest. I want to help this somehow. It's very difficult, very complicated problem.
Okay, Sandy Boulevard Civic Corridor Plan. Haven't heard anything on that.
Other than April said when I was on the phone that there are actually, I guess, parallel plans running, one for Rose Lane and one for what you're talking about, the corridor plan. And we didn't get into it, but there's,
Well, I bet the corridor plan has money earmarked in this next bond that they're asking for.
yeah, probably.
What does civic corridor mean?
Well, it's a good question. Civic corridor definition by the latest comprehensive plan is there's a number of them in the city, but they're supposed to be more for pedestrian mobility and access throughout the city, and creating people spaces between the buildings. And they happen to be typically on freight corridors, which makes it
Very difficult.
very difficult.
Not only freight corridors, but heavily traveled corridors. I think 82nd Avenue is one.
Mhm.
And I mean, Sandy is an everything corridor: bikes, transit, freight, vehicles,
Yep.
pedestrians, the whole works, and it
Emergency
doesn't all
access.
fit within the right of way.
Okay.
So everybody and their brother wants a room between the buildings, at least in the public right of way. And my proposals fell on deaf ears, which was to not put people on the street eating dinner face to Sandy Boulevard, but in between the buildings on the side streets, because that's where you would feel much more comfortable, much less pollution, much safer. But
You mean on the sidewalks on the streets?
yeah, sidewalks on the streets, have little cafes that spill out into the streets, but not necessarily on Sandy Boulevard itself.
Yeah. Well, kind of like what Arrowwood has up here. They've on the east side, Arrowwood on the corner of, what is that, 59th and Sandy. It's a brewery restaurant right next to Thai Seasons. They have their open area on the east side out over on the sidewalk. And it's pretty nice.
You go up by Safeway. You go up
Yeah.
by Safeway, and there's two of the restaurants that are actually on Sandy.
Yeah, that looks scary to me.
And then there's this. We were talking earlier, Tamara. You weren't on yet. One of the cross streets, and I don't know the number of it, but it's one that I used to get to Gregory Heights Library. But they put one of the orange bike things in there, and it is an extremely narrow street, and it really has created a safety problem with the throat of the street there. I mentioned that to April. I says, I know this isn't yours, but this is because the bike sharing thing is actually wider than a car, and it's only a 3-car wide street.
Mm.
That would be problematic.
Yeah, I think it's problematic. I'm sorry, I don't know what the number of the street is. There's the one signal down there, and it's one, if you're going east, it's one past the signal in the high 60s, I think 68th maybe, or something like that.
It's just outside of our jurisdiction.
It is. I understand that it is. And it doesn't affect the traffic necessarily on Sandy, but it certainly could prove to cause an accident if you've got a car turning onto the street and another car coming down the street towards Sandy. It could certainly cause.
Is it on the north side or the south side?
On the south side, on the southwest corner, there's one parking place before you get to it that'll take a small car, a compact car.
Okay.
And if you're going east, there's a signal that's on a street there. I don't know what it is. It's in the high 60s, I think, because it's before you get to Safeway, and it's the next street.
Is it Thin Hong corner? Do you remember the restaurants or the buildings?
No, I don't. I'm sorry. I was going to look, but it's just before you get to Safeway, basically.
Okay,
But it's on the south side.
gotcha.
Um,
All right,
Okay.
we have the 72nd Drive to one way.
I've heard nothing about that.
I haven't heard any more about it either.
All I heard is there were traffic engineers out there, surveyors, not traffic engineers, surveyors.
If
Don't
I'd have
know
had
why.
more time, I would have asked April, but she had a meeting to go to.
I am behind on getting letters out, so the letter to the TriMet folks hasn't gone out yet.
Okay.
And I will say, when I called April, she was actually picked up the phone. She didn't have to call me back.
Now
That's cool.
this transit center, which one are we talking about? The
Hollywood?
60th? Oh, the Hollywood one. Okay. Well, they're getting rid of that area, right? They're going to build on that open area.
Yeah.
This is actually a letter to TriMet about the transit center, which is 60th Transit.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry. Because I knew we talked about the other one.
And we were talking about that we wanted to,
Safety.
couple with 82nd and maybe Hollywood. And then I talked to Joe, and Joe Schaefer said, we got so many other things to focus on. And that's when we found out about, everything, including the trolley and then the rebuilding of the 42nd Street.
Not rebuilding, it's just taking it out, basically.
Yeah.
And putting in an L-shaped housing. And I still can't see how they're going to stage those buses on the street and make turns onto 42nd.
Oh, I don't either.
I think TriMet set out a survey within the last 3 weeks, and I took the survey. It was about ridership, wanting to know if I rode mass transit and why not. And
I took it too.
I took the opportunity to talk about the 82nd Street area and brought in the homeless and houseless issue. And that 82nd is just a horrible mess. And then, the new university is just down the street, and they think that people are going to take mass transit. And of course, there's not many on campus right now, but I wouldn't do it. As a student, I wouldn't do it and walk out of there. So I just really railed on them and gave them the names of some of these portable hygiene unit manufacturers that they really needed to become invested in the houseless issue, especially around there.
There's a porta potty about a block away that I think's for them.
Yeah, well, these hygiene units, they're trailers. They have laundry facilities, they have showers, and they have bathroom facilities. So, because people are camped there and they're all around, they place the rocks there under the overpass, the Banfield overpass there, to push people away, but they're still there. They're around, what is that, Sunshine Dairy?
Yeah, it was Sunshine Dairy. It's not anymore.
Well, I think their sign is still there. Anyway, along and around that area. Anyway, that transit station's a mess, and I would not want to use it. So I took the survey and I left a long message about the houseless and that TriMet needed to get involved in it.
And on the Halsey, where you go over 82nd, you come down off the ramp going eastbound. And I'll tell you, half the time there's people standing in the street, or there's stuff in the street because their tents are right up next to the curb.
Yeah.
I took the same survey, and about a month and a half ago, maybe even 2 months ago, there was a survey on the streetcar. And I thought that Sandy was not being considered, but the way they wrote the survey, it seemed like it was. But they said they were talking about both Sandy and Broadway on the survey.
Yep.
And I basically said it's not necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Wish I had seen that survey. Okay, we have the VPS Historic Resources Code update.
Did we talk about the Broadway trolley?
Not really.
Terry just mentioned that he said it wasn't necessary.
I was just grabbing for things that came out in recent emails in case we wanted to talk about it.
Well, they did, like, if you heard me, what they did is they had a survey, I'm going to say a couple of months ago now, maybe it was 6 weeks ago or so. And they also included Sandy in the survey.
Well, they were talking about, I heard from Joe that they had a survey and they were talking about the alignment. You
Yeah.
know, should it come up Broadway? How does it get to the transfer station? And, you know,
what should go along with it on the right of way, as I recall. In other words, like what kind of, businesses, housing, whatever. I think there was something to that effect, but it's been long enough now. I don't specifically remember, but it had a little bit of development associated with the right of ways.
So the trolley on Broadway would go from where to where? From the Broadway Bridge?
from the Lloyd Center area along Broadway, and then come to the 42nd Street transfer station.
Goodness gracious.
I can't see how they can even get that in there when they're going to get rid of the station itself.
And Lloyd Center.
The buses on the street.
Lloyd Center's probably going to go.
Well, I think, we need to do a letter to them to say we need to be involved in this.
Wasn't there a big study of Broadway several years ago? Big plan study. I remember there was a fellow that came to the land use meetings and he was on the study or the committee to look at Broadway and do different things with Broadway, and it came up to Sandy Boulevard from the Broadway Bridge to up to Sandy. Do you remember that?
Yep, I do.
Well, it's partially on Weidler now. It comes up Weidler to about 7th or something. Northeast 7th, and it turns.
The trolley, yeah.
Yeah. Something
But
like that.
there was a study along Broadway, and they were talking about it was more for cyclists. How are we going to get cyclists onto Broadway and get people through here?
And the businesses really lost money when they did that test project. Nate was the one that said that, if you remember.
Nate.
Yeah, he used to be on the committee here.
Yeah. Was he involved with the Broadway project?
Well, I think he had an office down there, or he knew somebody that had an
I
office
see.
down there or something like that. And he says business is way down.
Well, they
Top
changed,
40% or something.
right? They did some demonstration projects on the parking areas on Broadway. I don't remember what that was, but
That's what
anyway.
he's talking about. That's what I'm
I
talking
see.
about.
I see.
So there was a motion about getting a letter to the folks doing the Broadway trolley, asking that we be notified and brought into the project. And I didn't get a second on that.
Did you make the motion or did I?
You made the motion.
Oh,
I made the suggestion. You made the motion.
Okay. All right. I didn't realize I'd made a motion, but yes, I will take credit for the motion.
And
I'll second it.
okay. And all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Another letter. Get
So
that.
you're thinking, Terry, that the Broadway trolley is also going to maybe include along Sandy Boulevard also?
No, it was one or the other. I don't think
Either or, okay.
it was an either. I think it was more of an either or. I mean, how do you feel about it on Sandy? How do you feel about it on Broadway? And they're not going to do both. If I remember this, it's been, like I say, it's been a couple of months since I did the survey, and I totally disagreed with it entirely on Sandy, and I thought that had been pulled out at one time because Sandy had too much traffic. And I was
We had
surprised.
opposed it, and the guys that came and gave the presentation, they just wanted us to, nod and go on. And I don't know if they did anything with our opposition.
Now you're talking about the streetcar, the trolley,
Yeah.
or
The whole idea about having the streetcar or the trolley go up Sandy Boulevard.
okay? Well, I thought I heard somebody say somewhere along the line that it wasn't, there was too much traffic to put it on Sandy. But
Did they come to a board meeting, Tamara?
Oh yeah,
people?
this was a while back.
Mhm.
Back when they were doing a study, about where should the trolley be, and they were all excited about doing the trolley all the way,
Gresham,
up Sandy and head out to 82nd.
out to Troutdale,
Yeah,
Costco.
go to Costco.
I'd go.
well, there has been a proposal to put the streetcar on 82nd as well, but I haven't heard anything about that in ages. So
Don't people understand those darn things, make for, it's hard to stop on tracks. I'm just saying that metal is really slick on car tires.
well, it's
Yeah,
expensive to put the tracks in too, and you're not really gaining anything over the buses.
That's right.
Well, it's going to be real interesting if COVID passes us and leaves our lives so that we can function. How many people are really going to want to go back into the area of germs? I think we're forever changed in many ways.
I think you are correct. And I also think it's one of these conundrums that planners and architects need to get their heads around, that maybe we do not go back to having city-centered focus. We'll have villages instead of one
Right.
center,
Exactly.
I'm not sure, but I with people being able to work at home, with the internet being the freeway, and
Right.
as long as we have good connection, and I mean, the traffic has gone down whenever we were
Right.
staying at home and working from home.
I think people feel safer.
Think about a bus or a streetcar or a light rail vehicle, and you've got every other seat blocked off or something like that. Even before, the fares were only covering 25% of the operating costs. So
Yeah,
if you've got half as many people, they're covering 12%.
right.
I mean,
I think they're dreaming. They're
And
dreaming.
China decided to change the social distance from 6 foot to 3 foot just because.
Who said that?
TriMet,
Oh, really? Just because?
just because.
Oh, my
You
goodness.
think people are going to do that? People aren't going to do that. I mean, I've
I
been
don't know.
trying to, have anybody been downtown lately and gone downtown and taken a look at our downtown area and how
It's a mess.
it is a mess, but it's also vacant.
Yep.
The businesses and the people. And then I went to Lloyd Center, had our grandchildren, took them to Lloyd Center so we could go up and down the escalators and run off some energy. There were maybe 10 people total in Macy's. Maybe.
Wow.
The restaurants up above, most of them closed. Maybe
Yep.
there were 12 people up there. It was, people are going to be a long time venturing out and feeling comfortable going anywhere, and going into standing 3 feet from a complete stranger on mass transit. Not in my world. That's not happening. I wouldn't do it. I think the world has changed, and we're not gonna know how much has changed till we're maybe 3 or 4 years past the pandemic.
Well, I think independent mobility has always been where it's at, whether it's on scooters, whether it's electric vehicle, and family members I have who never thought they'd get a car, got a car because it's safer,
Yeah.
than trying to get on mass transit. This is,
Yep.
with this stuff, it's like, yeah.
Yep.
well, I mean, this is a statement I've made before to some degree, but history clearly I won't say dictates, but clearly through history, the more mobile we are, the better the economy is. And, you know, I mean, the automobile is part of that mobility.
No, there's no doubt about it.
Well, yeah, but also I think that has changed a bit with the avenue of having the internet. And
Oh,
I
sure.
really would like to see that the internet becomes a public facility.
I
know?
agree with you on that. I'd have it at home.
I mean, it needs to be a public utility that's provided everyone, at least at a base rate, because kids are trying to, you got kids trying to do school, that are in the same situation that Terry is. How do you do your schoolwork when you have to be out in the car next to McDonald's with your little laptop?
Yeah.
And that reminds me, I've got about 25 minutes left on my battery, just to let you guys know.
We're almost done, aren't we?
Yep. I don't have anything else. Does anyone else have items?
So I put down this historic resources code update. You sent an email around for that, and I got a letter because my house is ranked.
You've got a rank house?
Ranked, yeah. It used as a historic resource.
Okay.
Anyway, what the gist of this seemed to be to me, I read through parts of it, is that they had ranking from level 1, 2, and 3, and now they're going to change that to just designating significant resource properties. And I think the main thing that might affect my house is that I think it makes demolition more challenging if I was ever going to demolish my house, which I'm not going to.
And what is the department or what is the bureau that is doing this?
The Bureau of Planning.
Okay.
Office of Planning and Sustainability.
I was just curious. That sounds logical.
So this is something separate than on the National Historic Registry.
It is. The city has a designation for properties. They did an inventory, I think, in '84, where they went around all the neighborhoods and put together this huge inventory of all the historically contributing properties. And then there's been some designation of historic neighborhoods. So there's a lot of saving the past, which, I'm a big proponent for.
Did we try to do some historic designation for around 60th south of Halsey in that area? And the guy came and toured the area and said he didn't think it would meet the criteria of it.
Yeah.
Certainly not federal National Historic Registry.
Because there were too many newer buildings in there.
I see.
Are there any commercial properties in Rose City Park that are historic that you know of?
I did not look in detail at, there's a map you can, there's a link in the letter and probably in your email, and you can go in and put an address in, and then it'll show you your property. And then you can look to see what other properties are ranked around the neighborhood. I didn't look at commercial properties. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I can imagine the Masonic Temple or the German American Society could be on that. Except who knows now that George is gone.
I'm thinking about there's a fairly large house that now has apartments around it on about 55th and Halsey on the west, or I mean on the south side of Halsey. The apartments.
Oh, yeah.
The apartments were built in my lifetime because I remember before they were there.
Very close to Normandale Park.
Right near Normandale Park, but
yeah, I know which one you're talking.
I know what you're talking about. It's turned into like an apartment mansion.
Yeah, but there's apartments all around it now. Actually, that was one big piece of property when I was a little kid.
Wow. It's pretty neat. All right.